That's brilliant context. I think now everyone knows, where we're coming from with the rest of the discussion. So we jump right into it. First thing, maybe trying to understand, what role sort of like ops plays, right, in scaling and growing a business. And over there, maybe I start with, question. We love asking this question to all of our speakers, and it means very different things to different people. But for you, Nitin, in the context, especially of fintech or financial services, how do you think of operational excellence? How do you think of ops excellence? What role do you think it plays? How would you define it?
Sure. So I'll separate ops from operational excellence.
Okay.
These are two different distinct topics. Let me take operational excellence first. In a very simplistic manner, operational excellence is a merger of these three pieces. One is where you're optimizing the business processes. Now, these business processes could be automated, the business processes could be manual, or business processes could be the hybrid of the two. Now, when you optimize these processes and make sure that with the least possible input, you're able to achieve the outcomes and the outcomes are standardized, is one dimension of it. The next dimension of it is whenever you're trying to improve, change, or bring in a new activity or a new process, which could be by virtue of expansion, growth, launching of new geographies, launching of new loan variants, plugging in a new lender partner. Whenever there is any sort of change, the agency for the change has to be pretty tight, and it has to be further part of the standardization. And to make the two happen, you need to have a solid project management framework where you're able to pick up and break down work into deliverables and interdependent deliverables such that they can be executed in a structured fashion. While I explained this as 1, 2, 3, in reality, all of these are interplaying at all points in time in an organization. So you will have 200 projects running at the same time at various stages. So iteratively making it happen is where operational excellence matters. In a very simplistic manner, these processes are complicated. And if you can simplify these processes by defining them very clearly, it helps you solve for complexity. And whenever you have standardized it, the dependency on people, the dependency on situations, the dependency on tech reduces, and that also reduces the noise. And you're able to focus only on outcomes, and hence standardization reduces chaos.
And Nitin, when you look at this in the context of financial services, right? Like when folks look at banks, they look at NBFCs, at lending businesses, you generally tend to focus only on the financial or the funds aspect of these businesses, right? You may miss the complexity, the operational complexity of the business, just looking at it from the outside in, because it may not always be visible, right? To the end customer, you're making a payment, the money is going, you're applying for a loan, the money is coming, and so on and so forth. Could you tell us a little bit also about what role people, operations, these things play at a lending business, and specifically at a fintech like Navdhan?
Well, let me give 2, 3 examples here and then kind of make a segue into what you just asked. One is, let's say if Navdhan is trying to, so at the core of the function is to provide good quality customer service. When I say customer service, I want to reduce the touch points. I want to reduce the interaction times. I want the customer to have the desired responses that it wants. I want the customer to feel the need for credit, to be able to take credit and deliver on it. Interestingly, lending is one business where the sale is not completed when you book the transaction, right? So if you're selling, let's say, a soap or a detergent, or even if you're Urban Clap and selling defogging services, so to speak, you provide a service, you pay for it, and you're done. But in financial services, once you've made the loan, the life cycle closes once the last installment of the loan has come back. So the customer relationship at the origination end, when you have approached the customer or customer has approached you, from there up until you've made a transaction, you've disbursed a loan, up until you've recovered the money fully, is a full cycle. And therefore, at all points in time, the involvement of people and technology and the interplay thereof becomes very critical. So coming back to your question on looking at this, the most important part here is to look at it from a scale standpoint and compliance standpoint. So when I say scale, you are not just delivering one cup of tea on a table to let's say if you're a restaurant, you're delivering tea, 1 cup of tea to a particular table. If you have to deliver 200,000 such cups of teas and you have the same tray to hand it out with, you need to design it in such a manner that it not only handles volume, but it also manages the complexity associated with growth. Okay, so that's where it starts playing very, very important role. So therefore, you need to build all these systems early. That's extremely critical because sometimes we all in financial services, more particularly, think that, oh, I have X many customers to lend to this month. Therefore, this is how I need to optimize my systems. And you would see this both on the people side as well as on the tech side. Within tech, you will see it on applications side, on resource planning side as well. How much of cloud space do you need? How much of application optimization do you need to do? So all of this starts interplaying. And because it is financial services, compliance here is non-negotiable. And that also because you are audit prone, you have other lender partners, they are also governed. It becomes even more important to see this happening over your workflows, over the whole life cycle of the loan product, as well as general operations of the company. And therefore, all these checks that you embed there eventually prevents you from spending more time, more capital, more energies, and that's where the excellence is achieved.
Got it. Understood. And you said something very important. You said you need to start early, right? And obviously, Navdan, as you mentioned, you started 6 years ago. The business has scaled significantly since you started. Would love to know how you think about designing, right, the operations at a business like yours. How do you prepare it sort of for scale? I think some part of that you've already spoken. Would also love to understand how this evolves as the company grows, right? Like when you started Navdan, you were focusing on certain things, you're at a different scale, different markets, far more many people working in the organization, many more customers and lender partners, right? What were some of these key operation strategies that, as you look back over the last 6 years that you all implemented? Some of the one or two things that stand out that you consider to be like pretty critical, pretty important for the business.
So I think it goes back to the definition of operations. Okay. So we need to, when we are in an early stage, we need to build an interplay between these four elements: the people, the technology, the processes, and the governance around all three of them. When you're thinking, so somebody asked me, when should a startup think about IPO? And I had mentioned that you should think about the IPO the day you are setting up the company, the day you file your company with ROC, Registrar of Companies, and say that your company's name is going to be Navdan Capital. That's exactly the day when you should think of the ticker that will run on the stock exchanges. It may happen 10 years later, but the mindset has to be that it has to go there. Therefore, when you start planning, you will always plan future first, and you will be less reactive. Hence, when you have to be future first, you will look at people as people who will be compliant, who will be accountable. There will be mission alignment, and therefore you will define the mission more clearly. You will, because all the steps, all the operations that would emerge out of it would emerge out of what is the purpose of the organization. And you would need to heavily invest on trainings. When I say trainings, the way Navdan started, and just to contextualize it, we have 4 co-founders who started the business. All of us seasoned in and baked ourselves and turned our hair gray, not in sun, but in the vagaries of financial services. And we decided to hire freshers as our future leaders. And we are building a battery of leaders, a full bench of leaders who could potentially allow us to proliferate more of Navdan Capitals, more of lines of businesses, and therefore ensuring that we spend a lot of our time between the 4 of us co-founders in grooming, training, and ensuring, and this is both with love as well as with stick, okay, to ensure that they are thinking scale, they're able to build those things. So big mistakes, no problem. Small errors, not acceptable. So those are some of the ethos which come out of it. And then when you think technology, unfortunately, technology is a trap. Because in tech, you can't think long term. The problem with tech is that tech itself changes every 3 years. Every now and then. And therefore, when we started 6 years ago, artificial intelligence was what was defined in 1956. Now, the moment you say artificial intelligence, the paradigm is completely different, right? So therefore, when you think tech, on one side, you have to think of enablement. On the other side, you have to think of making your operations smoother. But more important than that, you have to think of agility to make change management easier. And change management starts from your mind, and it's not necessarily in operations. Then it becomes therefore easier to build processes and bring governance into it. Is it being tracked properly? Is it being monitored properly? Are there continuous improvements based on the feedback that we are receiving, either from the output from the business metrics, or from the customers, or from the team members? So it's an iteration of all the three, which allows you to plan for growth.